One, two. We are live.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Greg Hemmer. I am head of ecosystem here at Shardeum. And today we're very excited to demonstrate the next version of the Shardeum AlphaNet, Shardeum Liberty 2.0. This is the first Shardeum testnet with sharding implemented. Before we begin the demo, just wanted to cover some of the business, marketing, and tech updates that we've completed over the past several months. We'll also be introducing Shardeum Foundation's new head of people, Jeremy Holloman. Then we'll head into the demo. We'll cover the next steps over the remaining quarters of this year and update you on our upcoming milestones and answer any questions you have during today's presentation. So since we founded the Shardeum Foundation in February of this year, we've received a utility ruling from the FINMA in Switzerland as a utility token. We've partnered with Cielva Management to incorporate the Shardeum Foundation's office in Zug, Switzerland, which is the primary jurisdiction for where all leading layer one's foundations are structured. We have conducted several Foundation Council member meetings with our council members. We have filed the trademarks for Shardeum. We have actively worked and researched our token incentive policy and finalized that to be reviewed by our legal counsel. We have partnered with BitGo for the custody of the funds being raised in crypto and custody of our crypto assets. We have partnered with a leading KYC and anti-money laundering partner, Synapse. They're backed by firms like Jump Trading. So all of the private investors who are funding the Shardeum Foundation have been verified and vetted through the Synapse technology. We are actively speaking with a leading firm, Finiac Truehand, for accounting services to support the Shardeum Foundation. And we're building our partnership with one of the leading Web3 banks, Signum Bank, who will be partnered with Shardeum to provide our banking services to the Shardeum Foundation. With that, I would like to introduce our co-founder, Nischal Shetty, to provide updates on our marketing initiatives in progress.
Thanks, Greg. Hey, everyone. Great to be here. And I think the last few months have been amazing for Shardeum. One of the things that's been, on a, I would say, growth trajectory has been our presence on social. If you look at some of the metrics that you can see on the screen, I'm glad to say that everything's in the green. And though we are in a bear market, I think at least our numbers are increasing rapidly. So that's a good thing. We've seen some amazing increase in our website traffic and our blog traffic as well. The uptick in website traffic just shows how people are really interested in understanding and knowing about Shardeum. I think we're getting a lot of search traffic around. It's most of these growth is organic, where some of I think most search terms are just the brand Shardeum, and that's very, I would say, a very powerful thing for a project that's still under development, because it shows that people are hearing about Shardeum, and it's probably word of mouth. So friends talking about Shardeum to each other, and then someone going and Googling Shardeum as a brand, and then landing on our website. So we are seeing that increasing rapidly. In terms of social presence as well, one of the things we've not done until now is we've not spent any money on any of our social efforts or even website traffic. It's all organic. So this just gives us more confidence that the project will continue to grow. And I think I'm not going to read out the numbers, but the objective is to continue in this trajectory every quarter and continue increasing these numbers. We're talking thousands this time. I'm hoping the next time we can talk in hundreds of thousands when it comes to our community members. I just wanted to take everyone through a quick timeline of how we've been progressing. So we announced the project in Feb, and just a few months after that, we launched our AlphaNet, which is Shardeum Liberty. And the first launch, it was at about 15 TPS is what the first version of the AlphaNet supports. With that, we've crossed over 70,000 wallets that have been created. I'm sure the number is far greater than this, but I think we had a few updates in between. But it's still a very strong metric, which is the number of wallets. And a testnet having 70,000, I think it's a great proof that people are trying out, not just hearing about Shardeum, not just talking about Shardeum, but actually coming and using Shardeum, trying to send tokens to their friends. So we want to continue taking, this is going to be one of those key metrics, which is the number of wallets. And right through the whole project development cycle, we'll try to keep increasing this number. Your total wallet sort of, it's like the total users who are active on the blockchain. Now the other metric is total smart contracts, and it's about 700. And I look at smart contracts as every number on that is either a software developer or a company that is building a DApp. So we got about 700 smart contracts that are deployed on the testnet. In terms of community overall, we got over 45,000 people now who are part of the Shardeum community. We've been hiring. I think the last few months we've hired quite a bit of team members. We are about 27 people. Shardeum is a globally distributed team, so we've got team members spread across different geographies, US, India, I think UK, Myanmar, Brazil, Japan. I'm not sure if I missed any country, but I think these are some of the top countries where we've got people. So sort of, I think Shardeum is right now 24/7. There's someone working on Shardeum all the time, even with this small team of 27 people. Now the next step, which is, we gathered today for Liberty 2.0, and the last time I spoke to Omar, I was surprised to know that we're going from 15 TPS to 100 TPS with this launch. So this is a significant jump, going from where we launched a few months ago to now hitting a 100 TPS barrier. So yeah, I think I've got a few asks from the community, and this is for all of us to work towards. The one thing is, how do you ensure that Shardeum reaches every corner of the world? And one of the best ways to do that is to create your own little communities. We've got Shardeum, which is a main channel, but we would love to help any one of you to create groups specific to either your country, your language specific groups, anything. We've got quite a few groups like that already active, and I would encourage all of you, if you see an opportunity to create either a Telegram channel or a Discord server which is specific to your area of expertise, reach out to us. We're going to help you. We've got Shardeum Africa that's launched. We've got Shardeum in different languages being launched. So we're always happy to help you out to increase and grow this community of yours. The other is, if you're an app developer, I think, and a lot of app developers are just getting into Web3. So one of the best ways to really jump into Web3 is deploy some test smart contracts on Shardeum Liberty. It's the fastest way for you to test things out, to try your hand at launching a DApp or a protocol. So and if you're doing that, again, reach out to us. We're happy to help you in any way we can. We're also setting up our ecosystem development team, where the objective is to work with different developers around the world to help them launch their dApps on Shardeum. And the third most important thing is, Shardeum is a new technology, and there are some radically different things being done by Shardeum. that allows us to be scalable. So create as much educational content around Shardeum as you can. And again, I think our teams are happy to sit down with you, explain to you how Shardeum works, so that you can then convert that into reading materials for your audiences. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about. Omar, you're on mute.
Okay, thanks, Nischal, for the update. And I'll just talk about the tech updates quickly. And there's so much I could talk about here, but time is really limited, so I'm going to go through it a little bit fast. But first of all, I know there's a lot of people here that have no idea about the background of this project and how it came about, and so I wanted to take a few minutes to just kind of cover that. So the core technology has been in development since 2017 under a project called Sharded. And you can learn, if you want to learn more about that core technology, you can go to sharded.com, and we have a roadmap there with all of our previous quarterly update events. And those are all streamed and recorded and on YouTube. So that's a good way for you, like if you have a lot of questions about what's the background of the project, you can go there to learn about that. And that we started that project in 2017, and we figured maybe we could get that done in about a year or two, but it took a lot longer. But eventually in quarter 3 of 2021, we were able to demonstrate on a network that we call Liberdis, which essentially is coin transfer network, very similar to like Bitcoin. Also has the ability to send messages as well. But on that network, we demonstrated a network of 1,000 nodes achieving 5,000 transactions per second. But the interesting thing is that we first started with a 100 node network, and it maxed out at 500 transactions per second. And in that live demonstration, we kept adding more nodes to that network and grew it to 1,000 nodes, and the TPS kept increasing. So that was, I think, the first ever demonstration of linear scalability in a sharded network. And that caught Nishal's attention, and he reached out to me and said, I have some ideas on doing a smart contract platform. Do you think we could do this with the technology that you've developed under Sharded? And so the whole idea of Shardeum then kind of started in quarter 4 of 2021. And so we discussed it. I went back to the team and we talked about it and realized that we could actually build a smart contract platform on the Sharded technology. And in a matter of few months, we were able to get a AlphaNet launched. And so, we did a prototype, and then we did the AlphaNet 1.0 launch in, I think it was April of 2022, first quarter. And so we've, since then, we've been focused on our next goal, which is working towards our beta net. But there was, several new things that we learned after launching a test net. And so, we've been addressing issues that have come up and, gaining more experience with this network in a live environment and steadily making progress. So, when we launched, so most of quarter 2 of this year went into that. And so, we started with, we refer to it as Liberty, which is the same as AlphaNet. We started with, a 10 node network with no rotation. And then, we updated that to like 20 nodes and had node rotation turned on. And then there was, various fixes that, we introduced with 1.2 and 1.3. And, towards the later part of quarter two, we actually started working on the sharding implementation of, making sure that that works. And currently it'll require EIP 2930. And today we're going to be kind of demonstrating that for you a little bit later. So, with the different parts of the project, there's been a lot of improvements and fixes, with the validators, there was, areas where we had to improve our state syncing protocol as the amount of data in the state was growing. Previously, we had never had that much real data from users. And so the testnet was really helpful with that. We also had our testnet getting DDoSed, and we had to fix issues related to that. Chandresh, if you can go to the next slide. And then on the Explorer, we had to re-architect some parts of the Explorer to make it more performant. We also added a lot of UI improvements to the Explorer. Although I have to tell you that this is still just a temporary Explorer. Our final Explorer is not going to be like this. It's going to look very similar to like Etherscan. So this is just a temporary Explorer that we're building right now. So we haven't really started even on the final Explorer. And then our gateway, which is also like the same thing as an RPC server, we also had to make some improvements there to deal with the DDoS that we were hit with. And then on some other miscellaneous things, we've been running simulations of our P2P protocol to see how that's going to hold up with larger network sizes. We've been working with the Montreal Blockchain Lab, and they've been doing testing and analysis of our protocols. We've also built lots of tooling to help us view what's happening in the network, and also to improve our debugging. Chandresh, if you can go to the next one. Yep. And so with that, I want to introduce you guys to Jeremy Holloman. He's our latest member to join the team. He's going to be VP of People. Jeremy, if you're there.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for the intro. Really excited to be here. I'll give my quick introduction to everybody. Good morning, from Southern California. I'm based outside Los Angeles with my wife and two very young sons. It's been a real honor getting to meet the Shardeum team and better understand what everyone's been building here. Seems to be a super vibrant community. But a little background on myself. I spent most of the last decade in New York City, where I co-founded my first two companies, while also overseeing people and talent. And within those orgs, first company being Urban Stems, which is a direct-to-consumer floral and gifting platform with, thank you, Nischal, for sending me the flowers last week. And the current company that I am actually departing, this last week is called Clyde. We're an insurance technology platform that helps e-commerce brands set up and manage product warranty programs, and working with a lot of great companies that I'm sure everybody knows. But when I'm not building, exciting startups, or being a dad, you can generally find me doing some pretty active stuff like cycling, basketball, rock climbing. So that's a little bit about me. Been dabbling in crypto for about the last 6-7 years, mostly as like an investor, but in Ethereum and algo. And what really drew me to Shardeum after getting introduced to it was accessibility and practicality. And As I had been following the industry, it really didn't seem like anybody was thinking about scale in the way that Omar was, way back, 10 years ago when he first found Bitcoin, or really how this community thinks about scale. And for me, I always felt like there's a big UX problem within crypto, and in order for Web3 to be really inevitable, the user experience needed to be 10x better than Web2, Web1 counterparts. And that's what got me so excited about Shardeum, and really thinking that, this L1 could be practical to use from a cost and a throughput perspective, and can truly scale and bring forward this future a lot faster and a lot better, and onboard, the next billions of people. So really excited about this. My role in helping make this a reality is, ensuring that we have all the best technical talent, really in the world globally, joining both Web3 and particularly Shardeum, and building alongside, the core team that's already here. So that's my singular goal: attract and retain the best talent, and help make and set the standard for what Web3 company cultures, and organizations can be. And just really excited to hit the ground running next week, and appreciate being given the opportunity to introduce myself here. So
thanks a lot, Jeremy. All right, so we'll go to the main event that you've all been waiting for. So we're going to do a demo of Liberty 2.0, which is the same as our AlphaNet version 2. And hopefully we'll be able to show you a demonstration with this network reaching 200 transactions per second. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew, and he can take it away from there. And just wanted to mention, this network is sharded. There's 10 nodes per shard. We've kind of kept the shard size down, right? Kind of low right now because it's just a test net. And then we're basically running this on AWS. There's 200 total nodes. And Andrew has just, if you can see that screen, Andrew has put up. So with that, go ahead, Andrew.
All right. Hey, everybody. So like Omar said, we've got 200 nodes loaded up in a network, and I just have to move this UI a bit so I can see my own screen. All right. This is a network we had up last night, and we're testing on it. So we've already run about 400,000 transactions through it. I think it's probably got like 1 million accounts in it already. But the first part of the demo that we wanted to share was something that's important, that'll demonstrate composability. And so the thing there is our data being sharded. We've got sharded data, sharded transactions, sharded computation or execution of transactions. And the trick is having these things separate, being able to split up the work so that you can run fast. But also with Ethereum running the EVM, your smart contracts aren't always so simple. Sometimes they need to call other contracts and so forth, and they may not exist in the same part of the network. And so that's composability, when you maybe call one smart contract and then it calls others and others. And one popular type of smart contract that has a decent amount of composability requirements is an automated market maker. And so our team member Tant's been putting this together, and this, this front end here is a pretty standard thing for automated market maker. I can swap between my SHM and DAI token here that are on the test network we have. But what's important to think about for when this runs is this smart contract call is going to actually interact with about 5 smart contracts. There's like a router, 2 coins, a swap pair, and additionally, there's like the user's accounts that gets impacted. And so even though the consensus group size of this test network is 10, there might actually be 70 accounts on average that are storing something related to this transaction.
70 nodes.
So 70 nodes, sorry, yeah. 70 nodes will be actually like participating in storing updates to state, because this will rope in. We have dynamic shards, and it'll make sense more when we can do it, like put our white paper out, but like the sort of easy way to think of it is that, yeah, like 7 shards would be involved, 70 nodes, which is just kind of on average, because since they're dynamic, they can overlap sometimes, but so that's a decent number of nodes to be coordinating, and then to still be able to run fast with that. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'm gonna look at MetaMask. I've got like 0.9 DAI. I'll go over here to the swap and confirm swap. And I'm just going to approve it. So an important piece of the technology that was mentioned earlier is that this Liberty 2.0 requires EIP 2930, and that is an access list. And what that does is allows a transaction to be much more efficient because the network is able to sort of like pre-fetch data in its collaboration. And let's see, okay, my DAI is updated there. Before it was a bit less than 1, and now I've got the extra DAI.
Yeah, and so with that EIP 2930, the important thing is that any dApp developers, even though they can still deploy the same smart contracts on the network, you'll need to update your front end to be able to create a transaction that's EIP 2930 compliant, which basically includes the access list, and the access list tells which accounts are going to be involved with that transaction, and that helps the transaction execute faster. Now, the thing is, currently MetaMask doesn't support EIP 2930. So if you send MetaMask an object that includes an access list, it throws away the access list. So we had to use the ETH sign method, which just says here, sign this hash, and we construct the hash, take the transaction with the access list, take its hash, have MetaMask sign that, and then we give all of that back to MetaMask and say, send this to the network. So that's how it's currently working. But as more clients have support for EIP 2930, it'll be less effort in terms of what the developers have to do. And eventually, when we go to BetaNet, we will also support non-EIP 2930 transactions, although those will be slower and more expensive. So in a sharded network, it'll always be better for the developer to update their front end so that it can construct EIP 2930 transactions.
Yep, that's right. So I went ahead and I think people could probably see it was pretty standard. I approved my DAI token to be used by the swap, and then I added some liquidity, and so my DAI has gone back down below 1, and in the swap interface here, I now have like some liquidity that's deployed. So next thing, and I'll talk some more in just a second, but the next task I have to do is to launch a bunch of load testers, because they take a couple minutes to do their thing before the big load starts. Then, all right.
So how many total load testers are you running, Andrew?
I'm running 10 of them,
Okay.
And what we're going to be shooting.
Each one submits how many transactions?
Oh, they're going to be submitting a little bit more than 10 transactions per second to the network. So
okay,
we should see, what we want to see is like a bit above like 100 TPS on average. And
Cool.
what these load testers are doing is deploying like, I want to say like maybe about 1,000 token contracts. And then there's, I forget exactly how many, maybe like 30,000 accounts or more. And they're just going to be doing like token trading like crazy at 100 TPS, doing
Okay.
token transfers, which is a smart contract call.
Now, since we had already, run this on this network before, are those contracts already out there?
I'm actually deploying new fresh contracts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
wanted
I think our load tester has a mode where you can like reuse contracts, but I forgot about that.
Yeah, and just wanted to quickly ask, these 200 nodes that are active, what type of nodes are these in AWS? Are they more powerful than the nodes that already exist in our current testnet, or what type of nodes are we working with here?
That's a good
These
point.
are T3 large nodes.
Yeah.
Now, if you rent these kind of nodes on AWS, I think it'll be probably, maybe $200-300 a month to rent that node. But if you rent this on a web hosting company that's like a dedicated and get a dedicated server on a monthly basis, this will be like under $100 a month to rent a node like this. And if you have a really good internet connection and good, electricity, you could even run a node like this from your home, and that would probably be like maybe around $50 a month cost.
Yeah,
Great.
to answer part, or the other part was, how does it compare to what we're running in Liberty 1.x? These are the same node size, so we're definitely not vertically scaling here. It's horizontal scale.
Great. So whereas other blockchains currently use more powerful nodes to process transactions faster, today we're going to be able to demonstrate, a network that was previously 15 TPS, that's now 100 TPS with the same hardware being used.
Yep, that's right. And I forget the exact specifications of one of these AWS nodes, but I think it's like 2 cores or at least 2 hardware threads and 8 gigabytes of memory. So it's nothing too crazy. And that's what we want. We want the low requirements per node so we can max out on decentralization, get more people than ever participating in running servers. Instead of the opposite where, the other thing is vertical scaling could require that people have 32 cores or something, but that's not the direction we're going.
Yeah, so it's probably, yeah.
Okay.
Is it ready for the?
Yeah, so
main
it's
load?
going to start in just a second. What it did is this particular load testers, they sort of like deploy all the contracts and then do a little, I think they do a little checking or waiting, and then they start the full load. We'll see the average TPS update in a minute here.
It looks like they're starting to go, right?
Yeah, now they're starting the actual, these are transfer transactions. And
are these token transfers or are they coin transfers?
Oh, they're token transfers. So these are smart contract calls.
So ERC20 token transfers between 2
correct.
accounts?
Yeah. So
Cool.
yeah, like a coin transfer would be less load. But yeah, we want to actually do something that's substantial and actually, is activating the EVM for each call.
Wow, awesome.
And each one of these on average is probably saving data across about 3 shards, just the way things are currently. So,
All right, looks like we're up to 111 TPS.
Yeah, let's see. My charts page should update in a second as well, and we'll kind of, when we come back to this, we'll see how it's been doing over time. But this network in our past tests last couple of days has been very comfortable at this rate. So it's pretty much going to sit here and run at 100 TPS, all day long if we let it.
That's
and
awesome.
So one thing that's, it's one thing to just have these load testers running, but while this load is going on, I actually want to switch over to MetaMask and like actually use it like a user as well. Actually, sorry, Remix, I mean. So I am going to, let's see, first I'm gonna just reload real quick to make sure I have like a fresh, everything's sort of reset and remix. And I just have an Open Zeppelin kind of contract. We've used something real similar in past demos, but I'm going to compile it and then deploy it to this network. Have to make sure to pick the right contract.
And
And-
what about the account? Is it an account that doesn't have a lot of tokens on it?
Let's see. Let me pick it. Actually, right now I'm in environment like local VM. I need to actually put it to our MetaMask. So now it's picked up on one of my accounts. I've got like 146 coins on this account, and I think I don't remember if I've deployed contracts to this account or not, but we'll deploy one now anyway. So I put the initial supply. So I'm giving myself 5,000 tokens, and let me just approve that in MetaMask. Now, an interesting thing about this is we talked before about needing ERC20. If you're just using a simple smart contract, like a single one's involved in it, most of the time it won't need ERC20 in this particular Alpha 2.0 test, just due to the way some internal things work. So right now I'm using MetaMask and not ERC20. So that's kind of good, because I think some people in the community, like before you've had a chance to say like update a web app that's going to do the ERC20 list, which is a little bit of a challenge there. You can at least go in with some like simpler contracts and be interacting with Liberty 2.0. And okay, so that contract has deployed, and I actually, let me, my interface, my Zoom UI is always where I don't want it to be. So this contract has some standard things like how many decimals, what's the name and the symbol. These are ETH calls. So that's means our RPC server makes a call to like a random validator, and that executes some code on the EVM, but it's not a transaction, so no state changes, but it does like call a function to return, in this case, simple stuff like the name of the token and the symbol, which is exactly what, say, MetaMask would do when I go to copy this address and import a token. MetaMask is going to make those same kind of calls, RPC calls. And let me switch back to charts for a second. So here's our performance, and I'm going to auto scale this. All right, so you can see we've got the yellow line is like rejected transactions. It's just steady at 0. Blue is our transactions per second. That's actually like applied. Like these have gone in and are actually like fully applied.
And Andrew, can you show your screen with the network? Just to see like.
Oh yeah,
yeah. All right, it's still getting bombarded.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
all
getting.
Right. You can switch back.
Yep. So everything's still running. In fact, this green is like internal system load. The little triangles are probably intervals where the node's doing a little bit more work to compute like a cycle update or something like that. But it's still like very satisfyingly low. And even this red line up here is at 0.5, which is, it's not exactly a linear scale, but like when we get to 0.8 is when we start like rejecting transactions. So this network is still like a long ways off before it would, or a ways off before it'd start rejecting transactions. So yeah, let me add the token, import it. You can see I've got that token there, and I can also just like do a token transaction to another one of my accounts. and this also is not an EIP 2930, but it's such a like simple call that it's just going to work. Whereas that AMM example before that requires the EIP 2930. Although, one of the things we're going to be working on is we have a roadmap, and there's actually like pieces of technology in place already that are part of this roadmap that get us to beta. And in beta, we have the generalized sharding where it's not required for people to use EIP 2930. It's just like a performance boost if they do. So our assets have decreased there. And if I were to like hop over to that account I sent it to, I guess I had already imported that token from the past, which is a kind of a weird thing to say, but this token contract addresses are deterministic. So like you could import a bunch of contracts, and even though this didn't exist yet, MetaMask still just had that like deterministic address on it. Knew it was there. So we see the tokens show up in my other account. And let's see. Oh yeah, I just wanted to say, like it got mentioned earlier, a bit about like having the community on our alpha networks. That has been super helpful in shaping like what optimizations we work on next, especially because we just get there's a lot more that happens on our network than maybe we would ever like think up to do on our own. So that gives us challenges to figure out. It's really helped a lot.
Cool. You want to show them the AMM contract now with the
I did that. I did that at the very start of the demo. So
yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So while this is here, I just wanted to talk about sharding a little bit. Like, so we're using the same size nodes, but now we're getting 110 average TPS, whereas previously in our current Liberty 1.3, we were getting like a max of 15 TPS. Like, what does sharding do, Andrew, to increase our TPS from 15 TPS to where it's at now?
Got it. The way to think about it is, if every one of these 200 nodes had to work on every transaction, then it's only going to go as fast as just that piece of software and the computer can go. And since we're not using very beefy nodes, that's kind of set to be about 15 transactions per second. It's kind of like a comfortable rate for the node, for the validator node. But the way you get horizontal scaling and a speed up from sharding is that once you've sharded your transactions data execution, not every node has to work on everything. And if your node only has to work on 1/10 of the load, and we've split that load up evenly across all the nodes, then your network's running 10x faster.
Awesome. So now we have parallel processing of transactions. And some people might think that 15 TPS to 100 TPS is great, but there are blockchains out there that are trying to promote doing like 1,000 TPS or 5,000 or big numbers like 100,000. This is only just the beginning of sharding for Shardeum, right? Like since we can get an increase in TPS by adding more nodes, we expect when our beta net goes live and we start to add more and more and more nodes, the community can add more nodes, that the TPS is going to continue to scale, right?
Yeah, and just to kind of give you a sense of like what 100 TPS is, on an average day, Polygon gets about 40 TPS. Binance Smart Chain gets about 60 TPS. So the two combined, on average, are at about 100 TPS. And on the peak days, like the day where they had the highest number of transactions, Polygon was at like 120 TPS and Binance Smart Chain was at like 180 TPS. So the two combined were at like 300 TPS on the highest day that either of them had. So we're already like very close to that. But the important thing to remember here is that we've designed the system saying like, as we increase, as we add each node to the network, can we get the TPS to increase? And when you design your system that way, then this just becomes like a really powerful engine now where, we're just staying like comfortably within this range, but as we get closer to beta net, we could increase this to say like 500 nodes or 1,000 nodes and, do, a 1,000 TPS kind of a number. So,
Yep.
but yeah,
And the
so that's the important thing to remember about this. And the other important thing is that there's composability here, right? So as a developer, you don't have to think about, oh, do I need to, deploy my smart contract in this shard or that shard? It's just seamless to you. And it's completely seamless to the users. They don't have to worry about like, oh, I want to, interact with this contract, move my, coins over to this shard. All of those things are just eliminated, and we have composability. So, one of the holy grails of smart contracts is maintaining composability while you're doing sharding. And so you're looking at this happening right now.
Yeah, the other great thing, Omar, right, is that the network grows or shrinks in size autonomously, where it doesn't require the developers to add nodes. So when we say that the network is going to grow and add nodes, all of the current sharded blockchains require developers to go in and add nodes. Some of them even need to hard fork to a larger network with more shards. In addition to the linear scaling and the composability, Shardeum doesn't require developers to add nodes. The network manages that autonomously.
Yep, exactly. So, we don't have any extra nodes running in this demo, but, if you go back and look at some of our previous demos, especially from, the Shardist quarterly events, you can see that we had examples of, as the network saw more load, it pulled in more nodes that were in standby, and they actively started participating, and the TPS kept increasing as the number of nodes joined the network. So that's a really awesome feature, and that's only due to the dynamic state sharding that we do in Shardeum.
And Omar, how about the frequency of when it can actually grow and shrink in size? I mean, I know there are other sharded blockchains out there that have like an epoch of say 12 hours where the network is frozen in size for a 12-hour period. How frequently will the network be able to adjust its size?
So the network could adjust, in terms of adding or removing nodes once every minute. And so like over a 24-hour period, a network could grow by like 1,400 nodes if it needed to, and that's huge.
One quick question on the same thing, or Andrew. We talk about protocol transactions and messaging transactions. Could you just clarify what these mean?
Oh yeah. So so when I'm talking about transactions in this, like transactions per second, these are actual like user or client initiated, like something like you'd use MetaMask to actually like make a smart contract call, trade a token or something like that. So it's 100 TPS there. As far as like protocol transactions, we don't really even put that number up. And it's also a kind of a peer-to-peer situation, but that's happening like at a much higher frequency.
So for every actual user transaction, there's probably about 100 internal protocol transactions that happen between the nodes. So,
yep.
So at 100 TPS, we're at, I mean, if we wanted to include our, internal transactions, would actually be more like at 10,000 TPS.
Yeah, that's right.
But the important figure is the user initiated transactions. That's what actually matters when you think about scalability. So it's
yeah, that's what really should be counted.
Yeah, and we actually do work to try and like decrease the internal transactions. It's like, since they're not really a benefit, I mean, they basically do the work to get the job done and secure the network, but you don't want to, if there's a place where there's some extras and we can make it optimization,
Yeah, so
then we
we've
do.
like really spent a lot of time on tuning our gossip algorithms, tuning our voting algorithms, for consensus and so forth. So yeah. So with that, Andrew, so you pretty much done with the demo then?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to mention like one last thing. We were talking about scaling up in like our transactions per second going up as we horizontally scale, but like the data available scales as well. So, let's say like a commodity hard drive, SSD, maybe it's like if 1 terabyte was like a common size. I'm not saying that's what like the requirements will be. And then, a few years later, maybe it'll be 2 terabytes or something. As kind of as a common thing. Well, with the horizontal scaling, if your transactions are going up 100x in this network, so does like the available storage for accounts. It's one thing to have a super high transaction rate all the time, but if you're actually if these transactions are doing real world stuff, it's creating a need for more storage space as well for the accounts, the account state.
Yep.
So that scales up too.
Yeah, so the state storage is able to scale up as well. And the one thing that we probably could mention that new people wouldn't know about is that the whole transaction history is getting offloaded to archive servers. So that way, the validator nodes don't have to use up their disk space just to hold this huge history of transactions, and they can just focus on holding the current state. So that's another architectural feature of Shardeum, where the validators are only really holding the state, and the transaction history is offloaded to archive servers.
Just one last thing I wanted to bring up before we move on is there's actually other projects out there that talk about how they increase speed using parallelization at runtime with a new virtual machine. And they say that parallelization at runtime is not possible with the EVM, but I think we've made that possible using the Sharded protocol. Is that correct, Andrew?
That's right. I mean, there are some like tricky aspects to it, but that is what we're doing here.
Yeah, and that's partly because we're not doing like absolute ordering. We're only doing ordering within transactions that are related, right? So that's what makes it possible.
Yeah, that's the trick, and like that's kind of the first path of being able to parallelize thing. And there's a couple advancements even down the road that I think we're going to pursue. I think anyone that tries to parallelize the EVM is going to run into exactly the same issues, and it takes some time to think through them. And this is something we've been thinking on pretty hard for a while, and it's an exciting topic. Will be fun to share more details in the future.
Yeah, also really exciting to think about the unique improvements that we're identifying with the EVM that can be made, and hopefully in the future proposing new EIPs that benefit the EVM ecosystem as a whole.
For sure.
All right, so with that, let's move on and we'll start wrapping up this presentation. But before we do, we want to kind of give you some quick updates on what we're planning to do this coming quarter. So Shahzad, can you kind of tell us a little bit about what the community can look forward to in terms of the business dev and marketing roadmap?
Yes. Good morning, everyone, or rather good afternoon now. This is Shahzad Nathani here, and I help with operations and partnerships at Shardeum. Since February 2nd of this year, the team at Shardeum has been working practically 24/7 to get the organization up and going. The philosophy behind Shardeum from the day we started has been partnering and aligning with the best of breed in every aspect of what we do, starting from the law firms we chose, the custodial entity we aligned with, the accounting and tax firm we are getting on board, have all been the best of the breed. We've also signed up with a PR firm that is renowned and has worked with a lot of large Web3 projects, and they are helping us to move forward. What we have done in the last 60 to 90 days is we have met with about 40 plus projects that have already shown the intent to port and deploy on Shardeum. These are large, medium, and small groups of very excited individuals who want to be leaders in Web3. So we're looking forward to get them on board. Projects include NFT marketplaces, B2E games, wallets, swaps, project management, mortgage tokenization, healthcare verification, charity coins, supply chain management, and these are all people who should be coming onto Shardeum very, very quickly. Some of them have already tested on Liberty, others are following. So this is part of our upcoming steps. We're also launching a grant program shortly in the next 30 days, which will be available to all these projects who want to come on board. And that will be announced shortly. So do keep tuned and look forward to that. In terms of our upcoming activities, we are sponsoring hackathons and launching some of our own. We have community meetups coming in. Nischal mentioned that earlier. If you all are small groups who are looking at building, meetups, we'll be more than happy to help. Our online training has already started. We did a basic course on Web3, and there's more to follow, which will take you right through programming. We will be at most major exhibitions, talking and exhibiting globally. Look us up, and we'll be there to meet with you. Some of the upcoming events where you want to be a part of is Mainnet in New York, which is in September, 2049 in Singapore and London, DevCon in Bogota, amongst others. Please make sure you sign up with our newsletter. That will give you a lot of updates of what is moving forward. And that's the best way to keep up with us, as well as looking up on our website. We are tying up with a lot of universities, with their CS group, with the blockchain groups, and we'll be doing a lot of activities at the university level as well. So the intent is to make sure that people hear about Shardeum, work on Shardeum, understand Shardeum, and acknowledge what we are doing here. With that, I want to thank a few people who have been part of the team and have done tremendous work. One is, of course, our dev team. They have done a tremendous amount of work. Whenever I log in, there's somebody working 24/7. So thank you guys for all the effort that you're putting in. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge Swami, who's been working behind the scene, working up with our contracts and agreements. He's always there when you need him. And thirdly, the group of contributors out there who are doing tremendous amount of voluntary work with us. They set up meetings, they create graphics, they create videos. They're on our social media. Each one of them, thank you very much for being a part of Shardeum. With that, I hand over to Omar, who will give us a tech update.
Thank you very much, Syed. So this part of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the tech roadmap coming up. For Shardeum, we have about 4 major releases coming up, not including network refreshes. 2 of those are version 2.1 and 2.2 of the AlphaNet. So for 2.1, the main things that we're going to have are node rotation, rewards for nodes currently running in the network, and support for multiple archivers. So as Andrew mentioned before, archivers are kind of the beefier nodes that hold history about the transactions and things that have taken place in the network. For 2.1, one of our big goals is to have support for multiples of those. And then another one is that we're going to enable node rotation. So right now in the network, nodes are static. They're not, no nodes are joining or exiting the network. So our 2.1 release is going to have that enabled. And then rewards for running nodes is something else that we also would like to enable for 2.1. And of course, in 2.1, only EIP 2930 transactions will be supported. We talked about this earlier with the access lists, where a transaction should have an access list of accounts that are going to be hit by it in order to make it more efficient. All right, so for 2.2, after that, it's going to be the ability to update network code while a network is running. So now that rotation is enabled, this will allow us to put out code updates for new nodes and have them rotate into the network without having to do network refreshes where we stop the entire thing and start up with new code. So this is something planned for 2.2. Another thing planned for 2.2 is the ability to dynamically update configurations in a running network. So this means things like cycle time or other like network configuration parameters can also be updated dynamically without having to stop the network and refresh it. And then on top of that, it's also going to be only EIP 2930 transactions supported, just to make sure that the efficiency is still there for running these EVM transactions. And then the third roadmap will be the beta net. So these two that I talked about, 2.1 and 2.2.
Move to the next slide. Yeah,
right. 2.1 and 2.2 are in Q3. After, like today, we're releasing 2.0, 2.1 and 2.2 will be within Q3. And then Q4 of 2022, the beta net hopefully will be released. And this will, the main thing for the beta net is that we allow users to run validators and join the existing network. And the validators will provide a dashboard for node operators to manage the validator. So something like an admin dashboard to make the experience of running a node easier and joining the network, make that like whole user experience nice. And another major thing is going to be, it's no longer going to have to be only EIP 2930 transactions. And this is because we'll be adding support for shard hopping, which is the technology that'll allow EVM transactions to happen like dynamically without you having to specify from before all of the accounts involved in the transaction. So this is planned for
it'll be more expensive to do those kind of transactions, and they'll take longer. So it's always still better to do EIP 2930 transactions. But for people to start off that don't want to implement that right away, we'll be supporting shard hopping. Yep.
Yep. So not as efficient, but it's like general support, so you don't have to include it. And this is planned for the beta net, and hopefully this will be released Q4 of 2022. And then the final big milestone is the mainnet release in Q1 of 2023. And this will mostly include security and stability fixes that we've discovered during the beta net testing phase. No new like major features are planned to be included in the mainnet, which aren't in the beta net, unless something is found along the way, which would be like this needs to go in. But for the most part, the main changes are mostly just security and stability related. So yeah, that's kind of a brief overview of the tech roadmap coming up ahead. And with that, I think I'd like to move on with the next part of the presentation.
Yeah, so Greg, can you kind of do a bit of a closing and then turn it over to Dan for Q&A?
Absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here today and for your attention. I personally believe that this is the most advanced demonstration of a sharded EVM that has existed to date, where we've demonstrated cross-shard composability and transaction level consensus with dynamic state sharding. It's only going to improve from here. And I view like a blockchain or a layer one. It shares a similar characteristic with like joining a new country, where this is a fresh platform in a fresh network, where the network is similar to the land of this new country. And now we need to build the infrastructure and the different merchants and stores and retailers that you can interact with. And so this gives developers an amazing opportunity to be one of the first people to build an application on this network that gets attention from the community and can start to attract users and build an audience. Speaking of users, we've already acquired over 70,000 addresses organically. So you have a great opportunity here now to build applications that can scale on the most advanced version of a sharded layer one that will one day be able to enable 6 to 7 figures of TPS in applications on a network where the network remains decentralized and scales horizontally rather than vertically. The Shardeum Foundation can't build this without you. We invite everyone to come and, build Solidity or Viper-based contracts and applications on Shardeum, and the foundation will do everything we can to support you. We're currently in the final stages of our fundraising process. We've raised 8 figures in USD of funds so far from top Web3 venture capital funds, top institutional investors and firms, and some very well-respected and notable angel investors as well. We can't wait to share this fundraising announcement with you. And in the meantime, we invite you to learn more at shardeum.org. Join our community on Twitter by following us at Shardeum on Twitter. We're also joining our Discord community here as well, where you can see the URL on this slide. Finally, we're aggressively growing our team. We're hiring really talented software engineers. We don't care where you're based in the world. We're just looking for people who have really talented knowledge in data structures, algorithms, order of complexity, operating systems, networking, and cryptography. If you've worked on peer-to-peer systems or distributed systems in languages like Node.js or TypeScript or C or Golang, we invite you to come and apply for that position at shardeum.org/careers. We're also actively looking for developer relations engineers who will help grow our developer ecosystem, and for unique corporate positions like finance manager as well. With that, we'll move on to Q&A with Dan Ingemaus. Thank you again, everyone, for your time and attention.
Hey, Dan, do you have any questions that people have posted already? Uh-oh, I wonder if Dan lost his connection.
Sure, I can. I can try to run through some of the questions then here. Just there was one I had pulled up. The first question I wanted to ask Andrew, that was asked by the community, is during that demo, there was a question: are these software nodes running on a few servers, or are these separate hardware nodes? Could you just kind of describe the nodes we were using, and if they were in one data center or multiple data centers, and add some clarity there?
Yeah. So these are each node is running in its own virtual machine, and these are AWS T3 large instances. And so we have 200 instances, and our deploy script, the one we ran for this test, deployed to 5 different regions. In the past, I think we've deployed to more regions, but this test just happened to be 5. We'll probably do more in the future, and we do also test where we sometimes run, because our nodes are not so crazy heavy. I have a machine at home that I frequently run like 50 nodes on or 100 nodes on, but it's got a lot of cores. So. But these are all separate VMs.
Awesome. The next thing is, everyone, a lot of people want to benefit from the existing EVM ecosystem and the applications they've already built. There was a question, Omar, about if we're EVM compatible, or what virtual machine and smart contract language we're using. I know we demonstrated MetaMask here and Remix on the call today. Could you just talk a little bit about the VM?
Yeah, so I think we should really say that Shardeum is EVM based. We're not, just EVM compatible, because there's some networks who are not really EVM native, but then they'll have like a shard that maybe can support EVM type transactions, and then they say that they're EVM compatible. But Shardeum is actually EVM based, right? So we're actually every one of those transactions is running an instance of an EVM to execute that transaction.
Great. And, this is more of a comment than a question, but someone commented that this is an opportunity for a team to develop a wallet that's compatible with EIP 2930. I know developers are always looking for great ideas and products to build. I think you guys mentioned that, MetaMask doesn't have like EIP 2930, like that feature natively built into the wallet. Would you say that's a good like product development opportunity?
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be enough to, go off and create your own product, because, MetaMask has that in their roadmap. I'm sure a lot of other wallets have that in their roadmap. And so these things will eventually come. It's a great opportunity to submit pull requests to these projects that are out there, and get some kudos for having contributed to an open source project.
Yeah, that's great. I think this is an important demonstration of this is a good demonstration of the importance of EIP 2930, and should help motivate the existing wallet developers to, more natively integrate that EIP into their wallet and improve functionality there with it. So people like us don't have to create custom configurations. What problems, if any, does Shardeum address that are present in other layer ones, Omar?
Well, so with layer ones, and particularly, I'm just going to focus on the smart contract layer ones. The first problem that a lot of these networks face is reaching their capacity limits, right? So, with Ethereum, the capacity limit was about 20 transactions per second. That caused a lot of new layer ones to pop up, which basically just increased that capacity from 20 to like maybe, 100 or 200, 500. But if those networks get really popular, and the usage, in terms of TPS will also eventually reach that capacity. And when that starts to happen, there's, nothing, nowhere to go other than increasing the transaction costs in order to, get your transaction through. So the important thing is that, Shardeum is creating the ability to continue to increase that capacity, so that as usage starts to approach our capacity, we can add more nodes and continue to increase that capacity. So that's the really key important thing there. But then the second really important thing is that, this can be done with sharding, but maintaining composability while you're doing sharding is another really important feature, which, I think right now Shardeum is the only one that's demonstrated that.
Yeah, so yeah, as you mentioned, Shardeum scales horizontally. We don't run into this rising gas fee challenge that other blockchains have that are becoming congested, where they've reached their TPS limit, and then users need to start prioritizing their transaction with a higher gas fee, which results in this unpleasant experience of having to get in a bidding war every time you want to submit a transaction to the network. Shardeum solves that by always being able to increase its capacity to process more TPS by adding more nodes to the network. Andrew, there's another good question here about how do you drive the size of the database? Does each node need to store the complete database, or do you consider using other type of nodes to store the database?
So each node has its own local database, but that database does not store all the data in the network once we're sharded. In Liberty 1.x, each node is storing all of the account data. Now I say account data because that's just like one category of data, basically EVM accounts, contract storage, code bytes. There is also transaction data that we can safely offload to an archive server, because there's no like EVM opcodes that have to like read back in receipts. It's not like possible. So each of these databases has a different view, and because of our dynamic sharding, every node actually has like a different set of slightly overlapping account address range.
Yeah, and it's only the state of those accounts. It's not the history of the accounts. Is that correct?
Correct. It's like a snapshot. It's like the current state. But with our instant, like, or with our, fast finality and blockless setup, we're creating like very secure receipts before anything is committed to this database, as opposed to other approaches where you kind of commit aggressively and then, roll stuff back, a week later.
Amazing. And someone asked if like the existing contracts and applications on the current EVM chains, if there's any major changes that need to be made if they wish to deploy on Shardeum Liberty. I would say right now, the only thing that needs to be implemented is EIP 2930 to include an access list in the transactions injected to the network from the client. But other than that, the contracts are fully compatible with Shardeum Liberty because we use the EVM. Is there anything you wanted to add there, Omar?
Yeah, no, that what you said there is 100% right on. The smart contracts can be deployed as is, either to Liberty 1.0, which is unsharded, or to Liberty 2.0, which has sharding. But if your front end, if you don't include the access list, then that'll work with Liberty 1.0, but it won't work with Liberty 2.0. So
Great.
that's the only real change that developers have to make is updating their front ends to construct transactions that are EIP 2930 compatible.
Great. And the final thing that I wanted to comment on before we wrap up here is someone made a comment about how does this like differ, compare from the existing sharded blockchains. Sharding is an ambiguous term because there are many different types of sharding. And I think the first thing to understand is the 3 scalability bottlenecks that blockchains face, where every transaction needs to be validated, which happens at the CPU. But there's only so much capacity in a CPU to validate a given number of transactions per second. So that's called the compute bottleneck. The second bottleneck is in an unsharded blockchain, every node needs to see every transaction, but there's only a certain amount of bandwidth available in the network to gossip a given number of transactions per second. So you have the bandwidth limitation, which is called the network IO. And then the final bottleneck is that in an unsharded blockchain, every node needs to store the state of every address in the blockchain. And so every time there's a transaction, nodes need to write to the disk to update the state of the addresses involved in the transaction. But you can only write to a disk so many times per second, which is called the disk IO. So you have the compute bottleneck, the network IO, and the disk IO that limit the scalability of blockchains. Now, there are different forms of sharding, which mitigate different bottlenecks, where essentially sharding means doing something in parallel. So like Ethereum 2.0 plans to do data sharding, so they mitigate the disk IO bottleneck and are optimizing data availability for layer 2 scaling, although they won't have cross-shard composability. However, they're not sharding on the execution of transactions. They don't do compute sharding, and so Ethereum 2.0 will still be limited to 15 TPS. There are sharded blockchains like Zilliqa, which just does compute sharding. But in Zilliqa, every node still needs to see every transaction and store all of the data in all the transactions in the history of the blockchain. So they still run into the bandwidth and disk IO bottlenecks. And then there are current state sharded blockchains, which either plan to implement or have implemented state sharding. But there's a lot of inefficiencies with them where they don't have cross-shard composability, which is the biggest challenge. Is now you have this fragmented user experience where you don't have composability across shards. Also, it requires human involvement to grow the size of the network. So if you want to get more TPS, the developers have to go in and implement more shards manually, or sometimes even hard fork the network to a larger network with more shards. And finally, it's stepwise scalability, where the only time the TPS increases is when you have enough nodes to add a shard to the network. So it's stepwise scalability, where the TPS goes up when you add a shard, and then it's flat until you have a shard size amount of nodes to add another shard. And so you have stepwise scalability. With Shardeum, we solve all of these inefficiencies. Shardeum shards on all 3 bottlenecks. We use state sharding. However, we have cross-shard composability as well, where it's like using one network like Ethereum or Polygon that's composable, and it's also linearly scalable. and it can grow and shrink in size without any developer involvement. So that's really what differentiates Shardeum from all the other sharded blockchains, is that we can increase TPS with each node added to the network while retaining composability across shards, and developers aren't required to grow or shrink the network size. It does it autonomously. With that, I would say we've covered all of the questions. And again, thank you all so much for being here today. We couldn't be doing this without you, and we're excited to continue to grow the Shardeum community with you and enable a world where decentralization exists for everyone. Thanks so much for your time.